Hey everyone, you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis. And this episode is brought to you by my sponsors, which is my very own class coming out on October 5th, dealing with comic book investing. It is going to be a great class. There may or may not be a big pop culture event going on in a very popular city in the world that day. It may or may not have been planned, but that's what's coming. More information will be available to everybody who wants to take that class. And my goal is to keep it as cheap as humanly possible. And then the other thing I just want to say before we start is if you like anything that you want to support and you want to see more of, you need to go out and financially support it, whether it's this show, whether it's my guest's comic book, or whether it's She-Hulk on Disney. I personally don't care, but if you don't financially support it and then it disappears, well, don't come crying to me because this stuff only gets made with financial support. So having said all that, I am not going to bore everybody else with the rest of my sponsors. And I have with me comic creator Sam Carter. So welcome back to the show.
Yeah, it's really great to be back and catching up with you again. So thanks so much for having me on so I can promote Final Boy and just get to hang out.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on with Final Boy. Obviously, you are kickstarting issues 2 and 3 at the exact same time.
Right, it's a
And
double
before we
feature.
really, yeah, what?
It's a double feature.
Yes, it is. And before we really get into it, and we're going to talk about 2 and 3, there are people here who are hearing about this for the first time, are going to be seeing it for the first time, going to be like, hey, what is this? So, what is the basic premise? Because you were on the show a little while ago for the first issue, but as I stated, some people might be hearing about this for the first time. So, what's the basic premise for those who have no idea what Final Boy is?
Right, so Final Boy is a slasher comedy murder mystery. And here's the tagline, here's the story. When a slasher begins piling up victims at Genesee University, Isaac Lambert, an insecure and shy student, must survive a single night of terror as he uncovers an insidious mystery. But who can he trust when everyone around him is a suspect? So the first issue is the introduction to a 7-issue storyline. It's exercised at 32 pages. I got a copy right here. We got them all printed, and it's just a gorgeous looking cover. In this issue, we follow Scott and Haley as they search for a place on campus for a romantic rendezvous. And little do they know there's a slasher on campus. And if you've ever seen a slasher movie, you know it's a bad idea to have sex. If you haven't already, I'm really excited for everybody to read the ending to this issue because it contains a little surprising twist in there. And in the second issue, which we're currently kickstarting, we meet the main cast of the story as they react to the bizarre happenings of issue number 1. But to them, there are more pressing matters than the killer on the loose, like homework, relationship drama, and video games. In the third issue, which we're also kickstarting, the killer avatar strikes again. An evil masked figure appears. A girl takes a shower. You know, a lot of exciting stuff happens. And in that issue, you won't want to miss a thrilling conversation about the sexualization of piano legs.
Yeah, so let's even talk about this because
Yeah,
obviously issue 1 sort of introduces the idea of the slasher, and obviously
right.
these two people, they wind up having sex, they wind up, doing it out in traditional horror style and all that fun stuff. And then obviously this is now becoming a serial event versus just a one-off murder. And but issue 1 is really that introduction, and then we get into issue 2 and issue 3, and we're really introducing the cast, and it's their reaction to what's going on. So what was this like really building this out? Because it is a little bit different where you almost have issue 1 as the prelude to the main story. And so now we get issue 1 is in a lot of ways is sort of standalone, I feel, but it also fits in nicely, if that makes any sense. So what was this like really even
Yeah.
coming up with that concept? Because it's an
I
interesting
kind
cover.
of I kind of did want to have a standalone first issue, something that you can enjoy that has a beginning, middle, and end, and a satisfying conclusion, but also introduces the rest of the story and sets up a lot of important things for the rest of the story. So it's necessary to read if you want to read issues 2 through 7. But if you just want to read issue number 1, you could do that and enjoy it. Because I looked at this formula, a lot of horror movies like Ghost Ship, Scream, they have these short films as openings, basically, something that's standalone. Scream is a great example of that, where it's like those first 15 minutes are standalone, but they also set up the rest of the story. And so that's kind of, I want to recapture doing that as well. And obviously, issue 2, we introduced a lot of characters. The main cast, about 20 something characters introduced in one 24 page comic, which was a lot to put in there, but I think it worked. I found a way to make it work. Essentially, what we do there is we have like this long cafeteria scene where we shift the camera from table to table, introducing different groups of people together. And that's how we meet our main cast. So yeah, I just want to have like a standalone issue that people could enjoy, because that's the beauty of comics. You can have standalone issues and serialized issues together.
Yeah, and to even talk about that and talk about really diving into issue 2, I mean, obviously, we have Haley and Scott. They disappeared, and people are talking about what has happened to them. Where
Hmm.
there's a lot of rumors that are sort of going around. It is sort of implied that one of their bodies was found, the other has not been found. But obviously, if you read issue 1, something obviously, both of them are at least injured, if not dead, without giving too
Right.
much away. And what is this like? Because we get a real sense of this group of characters and how they're reacting to Haley, and how girls are being somewhat bitchy, saying she sort of deserved it and she was having sex, and that, she got what she deserved. And then people are also bummed out that Scott's gone, because Scott was their boy and he was hooking them up with a bunch of stuff. And so, what is
Yeah.
this like? Because it's very interesting. And then some people are concerned too. So you get a
Mhm.
really mixed bag of emotions, and also everybody's a suspect. So when a girl's being bitchy, saying, "Oh, she had sex," and being prunish, for lack of a better word, that is sort of suspicious. But then you also have a bunch of other stuff going on. So what was this like, really creating that emotion and not giving too much away on who the slasher is?
Yeah, there could be a wide range of responses to everything there. What I wanted was I had to have every character react differently. So some of them kind of victim blame, others are worried for their safety, and others like don't know much about the situation, and some of them are like really kind of standoffish about it all, or they just don't care about it. Like they just don't care that their killer, someone died on campus. People die everywhere all the time. So I just wanted to kind of capture like the different feel of how people would respond to a crisis scenario. Definitely with the killer, we can go any direction with the killer. Could be anybody, and it could be any motivation. Maybe like they hate people having sex. Maybe they want to have sex themselves or whatever. There's a lot of different ways we could go that direction. But
And
yeah,
even to go further into this too, because obviously you also now have the police that are interested in this on campus, where they're
right.
questioning a few students as well. And that also raises something, because if they purposely reached out to a student, and they did, what is the background of that student? Why is that student being more or less targeted and asked about this? And all that stuff. And that creates a whole very interesting dynamic. And I don't think it's just randomly thrown in there.
Yeah,
Because I
nothing is randomly thrown in Final Boy. I crafted this story very meticulously so that every single detail matters, every facial expression. The fact that a door opens a certain direction in issue 3 actually comes into play later. So my scripts are very detailed. Like a lot of things come back into play. Characters talk in a way that you think they're just kind of talking about whatever, but everything I set up in just casual dialogue comes back in later issues. So I definitely want to have a lot of callbacks in later issues, a lot of setup in the early issues as to what happens later. Like there's a conversation where they're just talking about reincarnation and geese and bread and stuff like that in issue number 2. And that actually becomes very important later on, as we'll find out in issue like 6 and 7 as well.
Yeah, to even talk about that, because this is one of the things that, and obviously television does this really well, in my opinion, where
Hmm.
when a show puts something in episode three, and then that builds into the final, you're like, oh, now I know why we did this. And they left something hanging for a while, and then you're like, oh, I get it. You put that piece there, and then it connects everything. And I think that it's an art. I think it's a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so what I wanted to do with Final Boy was I'm just going to show all my cards here. I have about 49 issues outlined. So I know that's a lot, but I wrote them in storylines of 7 issues each. So 7 times 7 is 49, 7 storylines. But what I did was I made every ending to a storyline a satisfying conclusion, so that you aren't left hanging if we don't do more issues. So no real cliffhanger endings per se. Maybe I do
We're going to
some.
talk about that too.
Yeah,
We're going to table that for 1 second, because
yeah, all good.
that's super interesting. We spoke about this the last time too, which is fascinating. And big series are interesting to me, especially when it's an indie creator. But I do want to dive a little bit more into what's going on with these two issues, because
Let's do it.
obviously there's a lot of stuff in these issues. Obviously, Isaac is having a very interesting conversation with his roommates. There's a smell going on. Also, the target that winds up being targeted at the end of issue 2 and beginning of issue 3, Isaac sees them. And so we don't know if Isaac is involved. And then we see the slasher, I think it's now called Avatar, is
Right.
that, entity, because we don't know if it's a boy, a girl, or whatever it is at this point. And we also see what appears to be this, I guess, slasher almost buying things, or somebody who is similar to the slasher buying it. And then it just gets really interesting, because there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that's being put into play. And there's a lot of areas and who the killer can be. And so, what is that like as well? Because I get a feeling we're not going to know who the killer is until issues 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. Issue 6 is the big reveal, and
We know
7 is
it's not Haley. That's all we know.
yeah. But yeah, I wanted to craft a really elaborate mystery, and the way I went about that was putting a lot of clues here and there. Something I did was I reveal clues through dialogue, but I disguise it as a romance subplot or something like that, or a different kind of subplot. So as characters are talking about their love lives, we learn clues to the larger mystery. And I do think in issues 2 and 3, if you pay attention to the details and you place things together, you'll be able to figure out who the killer is in issues 2 and 3, even though it is really disguised. But you won't really figure out the way the killer is going about things, I don't think. Like you may figure out who it is, but not how they're accomplishing the murders. And so crafted the story with like a lot of twists and turns and reveals, and you won't be able to guess every single reveal. I don't even think that's possible. It's a pretty crazy reveal toward the ending.
And let's even go further into this, because one of the things that's interesting about issue 3, and hopefully I'm not ruining too much, and it's a little bit of a spoiler, but the way that this couple gets killed is that they are watching a horror movie, and then they get killed by a
Right.
horror thing. And so they're watching the movie, and then the thing that essentially they're watching is killing them in real life. And what is that like? Because when people go meta, it's super fascinating, because that's a tricky art as well to pull off, because that tends to, I would say, half the time blow up in
Yeah,
somebody's face when you're writing it, because it's either you hit it perfectly or you miss. There's no in between when you're going meta into meta into meta.
meta is really hard to do, and that's why I just kind of dipped my toe into meta with this story. So that what scene that you're talking about actually included it on my Kickstarter page. So if people want to check out like those free preview pages, they can. But essentially, we have this couple, Dirk and Vicky, watching a horror movie, and on the horror movie is a couple watching a horror movie and commenting on that. is kind of reminiscent of the opening to Scream 4, where you have characters watching characters in horror movies and stuff like that. But it takes it a step further because while Dirk and Vicky are watching a horror movie, while the characters are watching a horror movie, while the killer's watching those characters, the killer avatar is watching Dirk and Vicky. So I forget if that's like 4 or 5 levels of meta I included. But it was really fun commentary to include in there.
And then even going further, I mean, obviously, this killer is killing this couple. The girl takes a shower, and that is just traditional horror by definition. I mean, that's the basics, where a girl takes a shower and then she gets killed. The boyfriend's there or somebody else is there. I mean, it's not, anything. It's kind of the basics. And what is that like, though, to take the basics, add a little bit of meta into it, and then create a very graphic scene out of it. And then also have, a lot of other stuff going on too, having Isaac and Alexis, up on the roof. Also, because I think they're relatively close to this entire killer as well. All this is going on. And then you have all that stuff going on. And now it raises a lot of questions on how is this all getting done, and even the reasons why this killer's doing what this killer's doing.
Yeah, the motivation for the killer is very interesting. I don't want to reveal anything about that, but I can't wait for people to see that reveal. But yeah, each issue has like different homages to different slasher movies. Issue 7 is sort of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A couple issues are more Scream, Urban Legend, Friday the 13th. Issue 3, I'd say, is more reminiscent of Psycho and Jaws. I do consider those Jaws movies to be slasher movies. I think they fit the genre pretty well. But yeah, you have a girl in the shower, Psycho scene, obviously. And the tagline for the cover for issue 3 is just when you thought it was safe to go back in the shower. A play on the tagline for the poster of Jaws 2, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. So I like coming up with funny little taglines for each issue like that. But yeah, different homages for everything. I think Friday the 13th Part 2, Scream 2, Urban Legend, those movies served as the biggest inspirations. But I did binge watch like dozens of obscure slasher movies before writing Final Boy. Movies like House on Sorority Row, Silent Scream, even the Banana Splits movie, just a bunch of schlocky stuff that came out. My goal was to write the ultimate slasher story, one that contains elements from all the major movie franchises, all the little obscure slasher franchises, and takes advantage of all the unique tropes the genre has to offer.
So let's even talk about
that.
So let's talk about this, because one of the things that slasher movies, slasher books, slasher comics, they have been around forever. And so there gets to a point where originality, or even twisting, a concept that's been out there, and then adding a new layer to it, adding a new twist to it, or even just putting on a fresh new coat of paint on it, is a big deal. Because this is one of the problems I think that's happening right now in comics, is people are not exactly coming up with a new twist to something, or even putting on a fresh painted coat, or just reviving something that was done in the 90s and then just giving it, 2022 art, where you could take a 90s script and give it 2022 art and it'll be fantastic. And so what is this like for you to add those twists in there and say, look, this is what's been done with all these slasher movies, and I want to pay respect, and I want to keep it familiar? Because that's the other thing too, is when somebody understands that something is familiar, but they also recognize that it's different. So what is this like? Because when you're watching these slasher movies, I'm sure you enjoy watching them, but it is research. And I think this is a big issue in comics, where people don't do enough research to say, this is what came before and this is the genre I'm playing in, but I need to make it different. And in order to do that, you need to actually know what exists before you start writing.
Yeah, exactly. I watched those slasher movies, and I actually had my laptop open while I was watching them, just writing down notes, getting ideas, learning what to do and what not to do. But definitely, I wanted to tell an original story. That's all I really want to tell. I just want to tell original stories. I don't want to ape off stories that came before. I want to find new twists, new things to do. And there is that argument that nothing's original anymore. I don't quite agree with it. I think you can still find new things to do. with stories. But with Final Boy, I wanted to kind of start in a place of familiarity. So like that first issue is typical slasher stuff with a twist at the end that establishes a different tone going forward. And then we kind of go back into some more cliche slasher stuff, like a murder mystery establishing the suspects and stuff. But each subsequent issue, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, gets more and more different, strays further from the slasher formula until we get to a place where we've never gone before in slasher movie territory. Something I have some plan that hasn't been done before in slasher movies. So I'm really excited to get to that point.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I'm a strong believer that everything is a derivative of something.
Mhm.
But then there's also new elements to it. There's new fresh coats of paint, for lack of a better word. And there's very few things right now in comics that are original. And even in the indie realm, I mean, it is what it is. That doesn't mean it's badly written. That doesn't mean there aren't new twists. But everything that I've seen, and maybe every year there's like 20 original, really original concepts that
Mhm.
haven't been done, and the other stuff is just mods on top of mods on top of mods. So it's interesting to see that. And horror is very complicated right now because people love horror comics, and they're one of the most popular genres right now. But it's also tricky because how do you terrify somebody? You know, and
And we actually,
yeah, what we saying?
we discussed that in Final Boy issue number 3. How do you terrify this like new generation of people who grew up with the internet? We have Isaac and Alexis, those characters in there, discussing how Isaac read Heart of Darkness recently, which is a book that came out centuries ago. But the whole point of Heart of Darkness was to kind of shock the reader. It was about cannibalism and stuff like that. But you read it today and it's very tame. It doesn't scare you, it doesn't shock you at all because we've all been desensitized to so many stuff. We live in a world where you can accidentally click on a website or go somewhere and see the most horrific thing imaginable. And the kids are regularly growing up with that. If you remember, like shock sites in the early and mid 2000s, those were a huge thing. Um, so I think there's a line in issue number 3 that goes like, "How do you shock a generation who grew up watching videos of guys suffocating kittens in vacuum sealer bags?" Really horrific stuff. So with Final Boy, I decided not to really try to shock or scare the reader. I mostly wanted to entertain them, and I made it a comedy for that reason.
This is
Uh,
interesting. You
right.
you bring up a really, really interesting point because comics are an interesting genre right now where when I read a comic, I want to escape from everything. I don't want a political agenda with my comics. There's plenty of other places I can go for that. I can go on YouTube and find any political agenda that I believe in, and anybody else can do the same thing. There's MSNBC, Fox, CNN, whatever floats your boat. When I read a comic, I'm coming home from work, I'm tired, and I want to have something that's a distraction. Whether that's I want to be terrified or I want to laugh. And I think this is something that people also in comics don't realize is that you need to also realize what your audience is. Because maybe not everybody wants to read a quote unquote traditional horror. Maybe they want, I guess a black comedy horror, for lack of a better word here, where there's some elements of messed up stuff here. I mean, people are dying in this book and
Right.
they're getting cut up, but there's also elements that it's kind of funny what's happening to some degree too.
Yeah, I want everything to be humorous in this book, basically. Even the kills are like so over the top or something that they're kind of humorous. But you described it perfectly. It's definitely a dark comedy. And I do agree with you that I mostly want to write like entertaining stories. That's not to say that Final Boy doesn't have themes, though. There are quite a few themes in there. Um, some of the themes are like when placed under pressure, people may surprise you. So those who succeed and survive may not be who you expect. Also, another theme is like trying to enact power fantasies in real life is destructive to yourself and others, particularly male power fantasies. That's what we touch on in Final Boy. And another theme is like certain media has the power to devalue human life and inspire people in the wrong ways. We'll all get to those themes, but I'm setting them up in
It's
little threads to continue in these early
it's
issues.
also interesting because I don't know the usual age for a slasher film. If it's usually like 18-year-olds to like 24-year-olds, or if they
Mhm.
vary, I don't know that. So, but this is also college students, and that's the other thing that's also interesting is that no offense, but college students, I'm not saying they're dumb, but they're also still in adolescence and they're also growing up. And
Yeah.
so that's another thing that's also, I feel like, in this book too, is that some of these decisions, these kids are 18, 19, maybe 20, and let's be realistic. I mean, I'm 29. I don't know how old you are, but when you were
I'm
18,
22.
when you were 18,
Yeah, I was 18 once. Yeah. So I'm still quite kind of in that age, but oh well. Oh no, I hope you didn't cut out.
of
Um,
course I'm cutting out. I cut out all the time now. This is called an internet drought, everybody. That's what it's called.
yeah, it's
But
all
what
good.
I was getting at is when you're 18, you haven't experienced the world yet, and especially when you're going to college, this is the first time you're on your own, and you're pretty dumb and you're pretty stupid. That doesn't mean that you're not educated. It just means you haven't experienced and you don't have experiences. And that's
Mhm.
another thing about this book too that's interesting is we're seeing what these kids are going to make in their choices. And some of them are going to make good choices, and some of them are going to make pretty stupid choices that may or may not end their life. So it's fascinating in that realm too. And you could read this book on a lot of levels.
Oh, thank you. That's a high compliment. I wanted it to be like surface level entertainment to some people that just want to enjoy that. But there's also themes that you could really dive into and think about, and hopefully, make you consider some things in your own life. Nothing too abrasive or anything. I like multi-layered stories, where you can analyze them a bit. So yeah, thank you. That's a big compliment.
But I don't want to push too much further into this because I do want to talk about Inside Baseball. And obviously, there's a reason why I'm being very vague in my questions
Mhm.
because once we start pulling one string, the whole thing is going to come tumbling down. And
Right.
I don't want to ruin that for anybody. There's a reason why we're not talking about the final scene, of the first issue. There's a reason why there's a lot of stuff, and I'm being purposely vague. But I do want to dive into Inside Baseball because you did fund issue 1 on
Right.
Kickstarter, and it was just by itself. And now you're at the stage of doing 2 and 3. And I think it's safe to say, obviously you have to outlay more cash to do both issues at the same time. Your printing costs go up.
Yeah, yeah, the printing costs do go up, but I'm printing fewer issues this time to kind of get ahead of that. I wanted a lot of issues of number one so that I could sell them throughout all 5 or 7 campaigns or however many campaigns I do. So they're always available. But each campaign I do, I'm printing less and less, hopefully. So that's part of the reason why I'm bundling issues 2 and 3. Another reason was, my artist and colorists, Marlon Souza and Danilo Leao, they work very fast. They're very efficient creators. So we just managed to get issues 2 and 3 done before I was done fulfilling number one. So I decided why not just bundle them? I don't want to hang on to issue 3 for forever. I want to move the story along and get people invested.
Because it's really interesting, and a lot more creators are doing this now, and there's a lot of reasons why. Some people have publishing deals, and when they do it, they're trying to get their books into publishers, and they want to get it onto comic shelves, and so that's what's going on in that regard with certain people. And also certain people just want to have more merch out. Also certain people want to finish up a story faster. But it is tricky, I think, especially when you're running this like a business and you're really building a portfolio out. And I think it's a really interesting thing because
Oh no, I hope you're not cutting out again. But yeah, I'll just say Final Boy's on Kickstarter now if you want to go check it out. Issues 1, 2, and 3. And are you back yet? I saw the camera move. anyway, yeah, um, it's getting good reviews, so I'm excited about that. There you are. You back?
Yes, clearly the internet does not want this interview heard. They just don't want me to speak to you. That's what it's going on. That's really what's
Um,
happening. They they
I
they
want
they,
to get
they
this interview
know
done.
that we're going
I'm
to
having a good
challenge
time.
the norm. We're challenging the norm, and we're talking about a really good comic. And the comic gods are not on our side because they're scared. So what's going on?
Yeah, no worries at all. As you said, bad internet too. We got it boosted recently, so I'm excited about that. I'm glad it's all good on my end so far. Fingers crossed.
But I think it's really interesting because I think that, also one of the things about when you're funding more issues at the same time is that we are in
Mhm.
the age of binge reading at this point. We're in the age of binging everything. Netflix, Cobra Kai just came out, and I watched the whole thing in 2 days. And I know I'm not the only one. And so that's the other thing, too, is that when you're producing an indie comic, and I think some people understand, some people don't, is it can take, 4 to 6 months between issues. And if you can get me 2 issues at the exact same time, I don't have to wait as long. Or if I am waiting, I at least have more content to consume. And so, what is that like for you as a creator? Because you also back projects, and the exact feeling. What I'm explaining is that sometimes there's a 9 month gap between issue 1 and 2, or sometimes it's a year, and that's a real, I guess, a downer because I want to know what happened at the end of issue 1, right? And I would imagine that with this story, there's a bunch of cliffhangers. I mean, I read issues 2 and 3. There's a cliffhanger at the end of issue 2. And
Right.
it's kind of, if I had to wait 3 months, I don't think it would be the same experience reading it.
Yeah, I do like little mini cliffhangers at the end of issues, basically. But we're just working at such a fast rate. I figured why not get the issues out there? I'm considering doing issues 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 as two campaigns, bundling those together as well. But I'm also weighing the options of doing a campaign for each one going forward, because you build up more of an audience the more Kickstarters you do. So I'm kind of caught between this decision. I don't know if you have any advice in that area, but I'm still weighing my options and thinking about that, because you do build more of an audience. And that's the point I'm at right now, is trying to get an audience together. I just started marketing this comic in March. And before that, I didn't really have any social media accounts. I had no Instagram or Twitter. So I started from the ground up. And it's been a challenge. Marketing is my least favorite part of the comic creating experience, I'd say. I still enjoy connecting with people, and I'm gracious for all the support and everything, but it's just difficult putting yourself out there, especially when you struggle with something like social anxiety and stuff like that. Every little tweet I send out, I've got to proofread 5 million times.
Yeah, no, it's tricky, and this is actually fascinating too to even go into inside baseball because right now, Instagram is weird, Facebook's weird,
Mhm.
Twitter's weird, TikTok is weird. And there's also a lot of stuff going on where, obviously I deal with a lot of sponsors and I have those conversations and people are rejecting me saying I don't have the reach. Yet I had a sponsor and I returned them a lot of money. I returned them a 5 figure, rate of return
Wow,
in
congratulations.
money. And I had they paid me way less than that. And I think that, social media is very complicated right now. I also think that people in the comic community, there's been a massive divergence where there's people who are what are known as activists and they support and they're very warm. And then there's been, in my opinion, a lot of creators who I feel have made it and now they have indie books and publishing deals and sign and they forgot where they came from. And I
Mhm.
think it's a big problem right now because I think that's a fork. And there's people who don't have those things but are doing 30, 40,000 and they forgot where they came from. And I think that
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of support from the indie comic community, so I'm really lucky for that. They're really good people and very supportive of my projects, and I've even had some people like proofread my issues before they come out and do really kind things for me, and I try and return the favor whenever I can. So yeah, what were you saying?
Oh no! I mean, I was just getting to the point where I just think there's a big fork in the road where there are
Mhm.
people who are that niceness and they're kind, and I've experienced that, but I've also experienced the opposite, where I've experienced people who I feel like maybe their bridge got a little too big for the water, and I think that it's fascinating, and I think that just grinding it out right now, I think that's the biggest problem with comics. It's two things: it's marketing and letting people know you have something, because these
Yeah.
algorithms have changed, and then it's also cash flow, because without money, as I said at the top of this show, without money, this stuff doesn't get made, and it's a real problem. I think those two things are the biggest problem. It's not creativity. Creativity, I don't think in comics has ever been the issue. I think it's really marketing, and it's also the idea that I don't know if the comic industry is growing. And that's the other thing too. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody put up in Facebook today, that we can use New York Comic Con. I got an email from New York Comic Con, and they have all these top celebrities coming, and that's great. But guess what? It's like the comic stuff in New York Comic Con hasn't grown. It's
Mhm.
remained the same, yet it's called New York Comic Con. Yet everything else has grown beyond comics, and yet comics haven't grown. But I digress. I think that that's the biggest issue with comics right now, is sort of those three things.
Yeah, and there is a shift with events like that, with like Comic Con and the Country Music Awards, having Beyonce perform and stuff. There's like, you get the
She
big
was
names.
great. She was
She
great. You
was.
don't say anything bad about B. You
Oh,
don't
no,
say
I'm
anything
not
bad
saying
about
anything
B
bad
today.
about her. It's just a bit of a, she doesn't do country music, so it's a
It's a
little strange.
joke. It's a joke. Relax. It's a joke.
Yeah, yeah, I don't
She
want to
does
upset
not do country
anybody
music.
that's a fan of
Clearly,
Beyonce,
clearly.
though.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't want to have those people come after me. But yeah, I do mean it. But yeah, I'm actually not sure if the comics industry is growing either. At the very least, there's definitely a shift. Indie comics are maybe more popular now than they've ever been. You don't really need a publisher to produce a comic. But at the same time, they're not like more popular than television or other entertainment venues. It's really
right now, the
difficult
most
to compete
popular
with
thing.
all the entertainment that's out there right now.
Yeah. That's the thing. The comics that are actually the most popular are mainstream. It's manga.
Mhm.
Manga is smoking everything. It's not even a competition. I go to Barnes and Noble almost every weekend,
I
and
know
there's a
where you're going
Starbucks.
with this. The graphic novel section is tiny and the manga section is huge.
So there's all these. I've been going to Barnes and Noble for like 15 years every weekend, right?
Mhm.
I used to be the only kid when I'm like 11 in the manga section. So happy I
Yeah.
got my copy of whatever came out, and now I'm sitting having my coffee on my Saturday morning, and I'm at Barnes and Noble. And the manga section is like right next to the Starbucks in Barnes and Noble, and all these kids who are in middle school and high school are buying manga. And one of them looks like a football linebacker, and the other looks like he's from Geek Squad. And I say that as nicely as I can, but they're friends, and you can tell that the next generation, and it's a very weird thing, but that's what's killing in the entire comic world right now is the manga stuff, and it's great, and it's huge amounts of money for Barnes and Noble and Amazon and all these independent bookstores. But like, I also think that indie comics have also become bigger because it's just that people are sick of DC and Marvel. They really are. And even Image, I hate to say it, but I think Image has lost a little bit of its step.
Mm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. If you want to look at what's going to be popular tomorrow, you have to, pardon me, you have to look at what the nerds are into today. What's nerdy today, and people look down on anime and manga and other things, calling it weeb stuff or whatever. But I guarantee you, like anime adaptations, manga adaptations are going to be the future of Hollywood. I genuinely believe that.
It's already started. It's already started. I mean, there's a
Yeah,
One Piece Netflix show coming, live action One Piece. It's
yeah.
already started. Cowboy Bebop. It's already started.
Yeah, I've been saying
It's
this for years, and prophecy is coming true. but I don't think we've cracked the code yet on how to do an anime or manga adaptation correctly. Like, there's been a couple good ones, but most of the shows and movies haven't been great. The West American versions of them, at least. But for years, like, they didn't crack the code on how to do a Marvel movie. There was like maybe one good one until Blade and X-Men came out. And then we started to figure out how to do them and refine the formula. And then we ended up with 2008's Iron Man. So there's definitely one coming up in a manga or anime adaptation that's going to blow everything out of the water and replace superheroes as the main genre. That's my prediction, and you could hold me to it.
It's already started. It's already started, and
Mm-hmm.
it started technically years ago. It started about 20 years ago, and
Yeah.
the day it started was when there was all these manga comics, and we're talking like Sailor Moon. Like Sailor Moon was a comic book, and there's a
Yeah.
graded book on eBay of Sailor Moon, and a 9.8 that's like a $2,500 book.
Wow.
And it started a long time ago, and nobody paid attention to it, and now everybody's paying attention to it. And I think that's something that is really interesting, and I think it also goes back to indie, is that, and it's just my investor hat, is I understand that indie comic investing is extremely speculative. It's arguably the most speculative thing you could do in comics,
Yeah.
but it goes to what you were saying, where one book out of the year will become the next big thing. It might take 5 years to get there, but every year there is one book. Now, what that one book is, I have no idea, but I could tell you what book it's not going to be. It's not going to be Eric July's book. There's too much hype on that book. It's the
Yeah.
book that there's no hype on, and then out of nowhere it gets optioned, and people are like, "Holy shit, this is a great book." I'll give you a great book that nobody's watching, but now everybody's watching. Gun Honey. Gun
Oh,
Honey is a book that legitly was not thrown to the side, but those books are worth money now, and it's not even optioned yet, or it is optioned, but nobody knows where it's optioned. It's optioned. There's no question about that. That thing is optioned. Now,
mhm.
who owns that option? I don't know, but it's optioned. There's no way it's not. Is my point. It's too much money, but that's the whole thing. Is that it's super fascinating, this entire thing. And look, I ran one for my show, so I'm not in comics, but it's just a very fascinating entity. And
Yeah, definitely. I can't tell you how many times I've dreamed about, making it big with this comic Final Boy. I'm just beyond excited for it to be out there. I'm going to keep plugging away and getting those issues out there all the way up to 7 at the very least. And hopefully something comes of it. I want to transition to screenwriting eventually. And I'm never going to give up on comics, though. I like to do both comic writing and screenwriting. And I'd be happy doing one or the other for the rest of my life. But yeah, I actually did write Final Boy as a screenplay initially, a tight 90-page screenplay. And then I turned them into comic scripts, and I turned those comic scripts into the screenplay again. And then I rewrote the comic scripts about 4 times, 4 or 5 drafts of each issue. I just wanted to take my time with it and get it done perfectly, so that there were no issues or things that would come up in the art process. But yeah, looks like you're back. Sorry you're having internet trouble.
it's just it is what it is. Something's out going somewhere. It's probably the whole neighborhood. It happens every once in a while, but I could hear everything. So,
Good. I was
and
trying to
even
ramble on so people would have something to listen to, but
But even going further into that as well, because this is one of the things that I think is happening, and even going to Hollywood and even going on to what we were just talking about a little while ago, a lot of people, obviously who do comics want to get into screenwriting. I know people who want to do that.
Mhm. And something interesting about Final Boys, I've actually recently submitted the screenplay to this service that's a script analysis service. So they'll give you like 3 different people reading the screenplay and give you feedback on it, like several pages of feedback as well as a number score. And is it okay if I brag a little bit?
Go for it.
Okay, my number score was 2 points higher than the movie Hereditary, which is considered one of the greatest horror movies made in recent years. And I do like that movie, Hereditary. So to see that just really blew my mind. I also have some quotes I wrote down from those script analysis that just, they're like my morning mantras, basically. I've read them so many times, like basically got them memorized, but they mean a lot to me. So the first quote is Final Boy is about a group of college students who stay behind during holiday break only to be stalked and hunted by an unstoppable serial killer. This horror thriller title remixes familiar slasher genre tropes into a subversive, darkly comic new blend. That's nice. And the second quote, this approach is bolstered by a tight structure that continually escalates the presence of the looming serial killer threat at the heart of the premise. Dialogue consistently provides a distinct brand of referential, self aware humor. And that means a lot to me because I really tweaked that dialogue a lot. I wrote down things people say in real life, tweak it, kind of cut out the boring bits. And that's usually how I come up with my dialogue, but I also say it out loud multiple times as I'm writing to really capture the way people would speak and talk in real life. Now, last quote I'll share from that is there's plenty of gruesome violence befitting of a slasher horror title. There are also exciting, unexpected plot twists. The self aware, reference filled humor provides a subversive edge to Final Boy, and it does provide a depiction of college age romance misadventures. So I thought that was nice. I just wanted to share that with you.
Oh, that's fantastic. And that's good. And this even goes into where I'm going with this is that a lot of people who write comics and they want to be writing screenplays and they also want to get movies made or television series made. And there is a big connection between comics and Hollywood, where writing a comic book is obviously a lot cheaper than producing a television series or making a TV series or making a movie. And it also is a gateway. And so what is this like for you? Because obviously you are wanting to do something in screenplays, maybe submit something, even tabling the money. Because if you get a screenplay submitted and then they option or they make a movie out of it or you get hired to write one, there's a lot of money to do that. And even like look at Brian K. Vaughan, he's writing the Gundam movie. I mean, he's getting paid a load of money to write that, and that's why Saga was so delayed with that entire thing because it's expensive to write
Yeah.
something. It takes a lot of time. But what is this like for you? Because obviously it increases your stock, but also I haven't written a comic yet, but to go from a comic book into a screenplay, I don't think it's that hard. It's not that big of a jump, really.
Yeah, I mean, each medium has its challenges. Like comics, you're dealing with still images, and you can't really use sound as effectively as in screenplays, and there's challenges like that. But they are similar in a lot of ways, comic scripts and screenwriting. My mentor was Sterling Anderson, a really fantastic award-winning screenwriter, and so I just wanted to give him a shout out. But yeah, he taught me how to write screenplays back when I was like 17. He gave me like feedback on my scripts that I had written, and I learned just so much from him. And also, in a way, Stan Lee taught me how to write comic scripts back when I was 14, I think. I bought his book on how to write comics. And the most helpful thing in there was just one page of what a script looked like. And I just copied like that format and I wrote my first comic scripts, which in hindsight were terrible, but it's about this superhero called the Gecko, and he's like an international spy and stuff like that. As a 14-year-old, I didn't really understand international politics, so it wasn't really that interesting. But prototype me. It was just figuring things out, and I've in a way always been writing comic scripts. Like back when I was 4 years old, I illustrate things in panels, and then I get my grandfather to write down narration for those panels and dialogue for those panels, because I couldn't read or write at that point. I actually didn't learn how to read until I was 8. Fun fact. But Yeah, I've always been telling stories, always been making comics, and I've just kind of taken that to the next level in the past year.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and it's just such a fascinating, world. The entire comic thing, and even just
Mhm.
producing comics. And again, I haven't done it yet, and right
You
now my
should.
my glass is full. It's full. I got enough stuff going on in my personal life right now
I
that
gotcha. Give it a shot one day. It's rewarding.
you know what is I have something and I have a concept, but it's close to the vest, and it's also the idea that there's other things going on, and I'm in the comic space, but I am more on the retail side. I am more on the investing side, and it
Mhm.
also goes down to finances. It goes down to what are my future goals, and there's a lot of other stuff going on, and it's also the idea is like, it's right now with what's going on in my personal life the next 4 months. I'm taking it nice and easy. And I'm not going to go ruin a good thing in my life right now. But anyway, enough about
But
me.
if you
I do
want
want
to
to get to
see
the
what
reward.
comic scripts look like, I could send you a couple of issues of my scripts for you to get an idea of what the format is and stuff, if you're interested in
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. At some point, I'm going to probably be needing it at some
Yeah.
point. But my whole thing is that the next 4 or 5 months, I'm just situating myself. And again, I don't ruin a good thing, and that's going on in my life yet. I'm going to have plenty of time if I live to be 70. I got at least 40 years to do that. So I don't have to do it tomorrow, is my point. But I
That's good
digress. I
feedback.
digress. And my glass is full and things are working. But I do want to talk about your rewards because it is interesting. So you have digitals for 2 and 3.
Mhm.
Digital, in my opinion, is great for international people or
Yeah.
people who don't have room anymore. Believe me, I've been there. Or if you're moving, or if you don't know if you like it, or if you're the type of person that says, "Hey, look, I want all my stuff in one location." And well, digital is a great thing for that. There's also the digital catch up.
Mhm.
It's cheaper, I believe. And so if you're saying, look, I'm unsure, there you go. Then you do something interesting where you have the digital plus the scripts. And so what is this like? Because this is one of the things about Kickstarter that I'm now starting to realize and understand is I think the platform has evolved, not
Mhm.
necessarily on a platform level, but on a creator level, where creators have to try new rewards and they have to try new concepts and adding value in areas that weren't there before because unlike Kickstarter is not retail. So you go into a
Mhm.
comic shop, you don't have the same sense of community. You don't have the same sense of we're going to fund a project together. I want to see this book happen and without, Kickstarter, no offense to you, I don't think Final Boy could be made without Kickstarter because of the
Yeah,
funding.
that's
It's
fair.
just the way it is, I think. And so, what is this like to offer? Scripts and insight and some bonus content. I don't know if there's annotated notes, but even that stuff because that it can be very helpful. Also, it can provide, I guess, more. Oh, now I see where he's going. And also, I see that he wanted to do this, but then he changed it here and here, and he moved page 4 to page 6 and 6 to page 4, and then 3 had to be written just to use an example. I don't know how to explain that any other way.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I just want to offer people like a peek behind the curtain. Maybe if they want to see what a script looks like, a format, if you're breaking into comics, writing them or creating them, I want to offer that to people for them to like visually see what that's like. Also, there were quite a few changes from the scripts to the comics. Not like a massive amount, but little things here and there. We added some panels. We took some away for better visual storytelling and stuff like that. I thought maybe people would be interested in seeing that. I don't charge like a whole lot for those extra 3 scripts, so it's just like a little extra incentive to go check those out.
Because it's interesting because at this point, I feel on Kickstarter is that you have to add value. You
Hmm.
have to add value that can't be sought out in the market, or you have to, for instance, if people, I know some people have their Kickstarter, it's $10 on their Kickstarter, and then it's 15 at a con. So that
Hmm.
it's not necessarily that the book has changed; it's just more expensive outside of Kickstarter. which I also think makes sense sometimes because if you
Yeah,
missed
no,
it,
I think that's fine to do. You can change your price regarding whatever the
oh
situation
no, I
is.
feel good about it because if I
Yeah.
back to a Kickstarter, I want to know that I'm protected. That's the only reason why. I want to
Mhm.
know that I got the best deal. That's just me because
Yeah.
I was there early. But I digress. But I think that's something that's fascinating right now because it's the idea that that's why you have stretch goals. That's why you have incentives. That's why you say I'm going to include a print with everybody's book because
Mhm.
that's an incentive now to go out there and back it and
And
also
we
say
do.
I'm going to get it from Kickstarter versus when it comes at a con or on your store or your Shopify or it's in my comic shop. I'm going to get it from you and your Kickstarter to get you over the hump. So that's the whole
Exactly.
thing.
And
And
we
then
do
there's
have a stretch goal this time. It's 6 indie comics first issues from a bunch of really talented creators. So I'm thankful that they were able to lend me their first issues for that. And it's available for all the rewards except for the retailer bundle tier. So you'll get them whether you order the physical or the digital copies.
well, I have my own thoughts on that because if you back so many campaigns, you get everybody's indie book anyway. It's like everybody's got to now find new indie people to get new books from. Is my point? Is my point? But I digress right there
The
too.
other idea behind that is it's just the first issue, which a lot of people hand out for free anyway, to get people hooked on the series. So I've considered doing indie bundles as well for the first issue of Final Boy. I wouldn't do 2 and 3 or beyond that though.
Right now they're beyond that. I mean, if you get to
Mhm.
the point where you're on issue 35, I
Yeah.
mean, you might want to give issues 1, 2, and 3 out because now you have so much content, especially on digital. It makes
Mhm.
so much sense. Um,
It's a
and
good
I know
point.
I know somebody who does something even crazier where he printed 5,000 copies of
Ooh,
his book and he handed out the first issue for free because he
wow.
got each of those books for 69 cents. And
Oh,
so
I don't know
now,
if I could afford that.
I mean, it wasn't that expensive.
Yeah.
So, but what it was is that on the back was his business card. So he goes to a con, and you have, if you have 15 issues of a book already, and you hand out the first issue, and you might pay $2,200, give or take.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't have the math off the top of my head, but all of a sudden, what happens is that people might not take your business card, but they're going to take your book, and they're going to look up who you are. And so if you think about it long term, and this is one of my biggest problems right now in the industry is that I think a lot of people don't think long term. I think a lot of people just on interviews don't think long term. An interview is a very valuable thing
Yeah,
because,
I'm very grateful to be here and thank you for having
because
me on. Helps
this,
out a
this
lot.
stuff stays up forever. I mean, I'm going to
Yeah.
be in this space for the next 10 years. So an interview today is not worth what it is in 5 years.
Mhm.
Because even if it only does 5 plays a month, if it's active for 84 months, actually that's 7 years, but if it's active for 60 months, that's a lot of freaking visibility. And but I digress. I think that's my point about the industry is that I think a lot of creators actually don't have foresight. And I think that they're very reactionary. I think it's a huge problem. But I digress. You have the physical books, issue 2 and issue 3. So I think this is one of them. That's
Yeah,
issue
that's one
2.
of the covers. That's the cover for number 2, 20 suspects, 1 killer, 7 blondes.
And so that's there. And then this one is number 3.
Yep. And I've talked about that tagline. I love that cover a lot. Like just the arrows and the bat and everything. It's gorgeous. Marlon did amazing work there.
And so obviously there's that. And I don't think there's any other cover, is there?
No, those are the 3 so far. I showed you like the first issue cover, which is looks like this.
I forget if there was a variant. That's why I ask. I
Oh yeah,
forgot.
there was a variant for issue number 1, and that's available on the Kickstarter as well.
And then also there's signed copies of variant issue 1. And I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure that if somebody doesn't want it signed, that's pretty easily
Yeah,
available,
you can just
right?
leave me a note and yeah. I
Because
signed it on the inside cover, so it's not visible on the front cover.
that too. I mean, some people are just weird about their books. Some people are like,
Mhm.
"Look, this might be a movie, and I want to get this thing graded. I'm going to go spec on it hard." It's super interesting. Some people are fast weird about that. I also don't like my Kickstarter book signed. I'm weird like
Mhm.
that. Like I kind of want to get it signed in front of you, and if I want it signed, I want it graded. But I'm weird like that, so I'm sorry, everybody, if everybody gets upset about that. You could just deal with the problem, is all I'm going to say. And then you also have something where you have a retail bundle. And so what is this like? Because I think this is your first one, or is it not? Did you do one for issue one? I don't know if you
No, I
did.
didn't do one for issue one, but I wanted to offer people like 30 comics, so 10 issues of each one, two, and three. And if they wanted some to hand out as gifts or some stores wanted to take them in, I marked them down from my initial price so they can sell them at a larger price and earn money back on that.
So let's talk about this, because this is something I'm getting into retail on my eBay store right
Yeah.
now. And so one of the things that I look at is I look at the track record of a book. I also look at the price of a book, and I also say, cool, like how many books am I getting? So what is this like for you? Because I don't know what it's like as a creator, because I've heard some other things. People say, look, I just want my book in a comic store to get more reach. And I'm not so much interested in making money on retail. I'm interested in getting into an area where I am not already in, because let's be realistic, some people don't trust crowdfunding platforms. And there's good reasons why they shouldn't trust them. I mean, I've been burned on projects. I don't know if you've been burned on projects. If you haven't
Not
been
yet,
burned on
but
projects,
what happens?
and so if you haven't burned yet, God bless you, right?
Yeah.
But the point is that so I'm curious, as a creator, what is this retail package like for you? Or is it just an opportunity for somebody who wants 30 books to get 30 books? Or is it the reach? Or is it for a store to make money? Or is it to build a relationship? Or is it for you to, sell 30 books? And hopefully the store is going to make money. You know what I mean? Because that's the tricky thing about retail packages, is that when I buy a retail package, I'm trying to make money on those books. I'm not making a hell of a lot of money, but if I can make a 20-25%, beyond cover price after all my fees, I'm very happy, because it's good markup and it moves. And there also is new merch in my store that's a little bit different than what I normally carry.
Yeah, I did mark them down so people could get a profit if they sold them. But yeah, definitely, it's all of the above. I just wanted to kind of throw that in there as a Hail Mary almost to see if people got that. But I'm just experimenting with rewards this time. This is my second Kickstarter campaign, and I fulfilled one campaign and that did well, but some rewards didn't do as well as others. So I'm still seeing what people like and what they want from my campaigns, other
That's
than the
interesting too.
issues. So that's why this time I'm trying the scripts. Next time I'll probably try bookmarks, pins, things like that, and see what
That's
works.
interesting, because I think Kickstarter is a gigantic experimentation. Look, I mean, I tried metal cards. Metal cards didn't work. I think in the long run, I'm gonna make bank on that, because that cosplayer, that's his first, metal card ever, and that's his first collaboration, and that guy is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and he's all over at cons, and people don't know it yet, but I think he's sold out of half of his metal cards, and I got a bunch of them, and I'm gonna make bank on it, whether it's today, tomorrow, or 4 years from now, because I'm the only one who has like 50 of them left, and I could set that at whatever price I want to. So I also, again, it goes into foresight, but they didn't do well, and also my campaign was a disaster, and there's a lot of work, but I did get funded. So
yeah, that's all that matters.
But I'm probably not going to do postcards. I'm probably not going to do, massive physical rewards again. I might do a metal card and that's it, because there are other applications for me with metal cards. But beyond that, I mean, it's complicated. Rewards are tricky, because you don't know what people want and when they want them. Like, I would make bottle openers of my elf if people wanted it, because it'd be awesome.
But you don't know if people want it until you start selling it.
And then all of a sudden you make 50 of them, and then like 300 people want it, and you're like, oh my god! So how did this happen? It's so weird. So let me ask you. I have a question for you, because how many Kickstarters have you backed? Just curiosity.
About 20 so far, and usually I back it at higher amounts typically.
So what is the best stretch goal you've ever gotten?
Stuff like posters and bookmarks. I think I really like bookmarks the most because I can use them every day, you know, and you need a lot of bookmarks if you're reading a lot of books at one time, like what I do. I'm ADHD, so I'm always flipping through several different books at a time. So bookmarks probably, I think that's what I'm going to do for my next campaign.
So the best stretch goal, I haven't gotten it yet,
Hmm.
but it technically is two things. It's a super limited metal card from
Hmm.
Zenoscope or Zenoscope's binder. They're sending me a whole binder that's
Oh,
like
wow.
printed, that's like worth like 20 bucks. And so that's so far the best thing because I know it's worth money. And that's
Yeah,
the
that's
thing is
awesome.
that. And so it's super cool. And so that's kind of some of the best stuff I've gotten. And then the other best stuff I've gotten is bonus comics, like bonus physical comics. Like Tom Hutchinson sent a limited run, like 300 comic number book that was like black and white. And that was cool because, well, anybody on the Kickstarter got it. It's a Kickstarter exclusive and didn't cost anybody any extra money because we reached the stretch goal. And so
Yeah.
when you send me an extra book that is super limited, that has a limited print run, and I know it's worth money, and I know it's exclusive, and I know it's club oriented, and I've gotten like two or three of those are cool when that
That would
happens.
probably be my favorite stretch goal, just extra comics. Like I've backed rewards before that have additional comics you can get or add-ons and stuff. But yeah, just a stretch goal doing that. I haven't seen that yet.
It's a Big Dog Inc. They do it, and it's great,
Mm.
and it's so wonderful because it's black and white. It's an extra book. It's
Yeah.
like limited to 300 or however many people backed it. It's limited to that, and then 25 more, right? Because you might print another 25, and then
Mhm.
you might have a good time with those 25. You might sell them at a premium, but that doesn't bother me if it's limited. And so I love it because when I'm getting something extra, it's always fun. And when you're getting something of extra that's value. And the reason why I asked this is that that's something that I think a lot of creators, I don't know if they struggle with it, but I think that if creators were more generous and did an extra book or did something clever, if you reach like a 30, 40, $50,000 goal, I
Yeah.
think you would have more customers. I mean, one of the things that happened with Zenoscope is that they did cards, and so now everybody was excited because you reach 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, and then people jump in when you have more and more and more rewards because you're getting more and more and more for your money. Like,
Yeah, no, those are all great ideas. Another great reward I've seen before is like getting yourself drawn into the comic where you send in a picture, and usually those are limited to like one, two, or three characters. That's something I couldn't do with Final Boy, but I did think about it initially.
yeah, it's tricky. I can tell everybody right now that when I do a comic, nobody's getting drawn into my
Yeah.
comic. It's a control thing, and I don't let people influence my creative works. It's just not the way it works.
It's
And
kind of
it's
the same way. I wanted Final Boy to be timeless, you know, where you could read it and it's almost any time period, and it's not tied. I consider doing like a thank you pages to Kickstarter, but I didn't want it to just be a Kickstarter comic book. I wanted to be able to sell it at conventions and stuff, and not have like the Kickstarter logo anywhere or anything on that.
yeah. See. I have a project that's going to come out
Mhm.
eventually in comics, and there's going to be a Kickstarter exclusive. It's going to be Kickstarter exclusive. That's all it's going to be. I'm
Yeah.
also going to have an eBay exclusive, and that's all it's going to be sold on. And it's purposeful, but the other stuff is going to be sold both on eBay and Kickstarter and at cons and a variety of stuff. And so, because I understand the difference, then also I'm going to have the option of having a retail or saying, "Hey, look, do you want your cover?" And I'll set a price. I'll pick 3 or 4 artists that you could choose from, and then we'll print 100 copies and send it to your store. You put your logo, you could design it, it's whatever you want, but you're basically buying the license and the printing. And then you figure out the art yourself, which I'm totally cool with. But again, that's a whole different ballgame, and that's going into way more complicated stuff than people need to know. And I'm giving away too much free advice for people now.
Hey, I appreciate any advice I can get my hands on. I'm
What
lucky
we,
to have had some great mentors in the indie comics community teaching me all how to do everything. So,
and the problem is that all these people are creative and
mhm.
they know how to operate a Kickstarter, but they're not creative in business. This is the biggest deficit in comics right now is you have some of the most creative people who do not know how to structure a business deal or
Yeah,
even understand what you can grant somebody. I guarantee you, if you really thought about it, and I know the exact way how to do it, that somebody might work for less for something else in that book. I'll throw an example. Somebody might say, look, I want 10% of the movie rights
yeah,
if this thing becomes a movie or television show, and I will work for half of my normal page rate, but I want some access and some upside. That doesn't mean I have a decision and you're the majority shareholder, but congratulations, you just got it cheaper, but you gave up 10% up option rights. So if it gets
mm,
option for $5,000, you owe them $500. And then if it gets picked up by Netflix for $6 million, they get a piece of that. Because and the reason why somebody might work for less is they're like, look, I look at the potential. But again, that's nothing insightful. I mean, I have 14 other ideas that are way beyond that. And so if anybody would like to, they can book a whole session with me and we could talk about every single idea and get really creative with business.
oh,
But
dude, I might have to take you up on that sometime. Yeah, sounds like you got a
I
lot of
got
good
14
ideas.
ideas for you off the top of my head, but I'm not going to tell you them right now. I'll tell you them after. I promise.
Okay, sounds
But
great.
I do want to back at a Kickstarter and
Mhm.
even talk a little bit about my final thing, which is my favorite topic, and that is where do you see comics and crowdfunding going? Because there's been massive changes in this. Obviously, there's more platforms. Apparently, BackerKit has left us all alone on Kickstarter now. Did you hear about this or no?
No, this is news to me. What happened there? Oh, no, that man, you're gonna leave me hanging. His internet's not working, so it's too bad. I really got, I really got kind of curious what's happening to Backer Kit. I didn't use them, but okay, now you're back.
Wonderful, wonderful. So apparently, BackerKit went out and wants to build their own crowdfunding platform, and so they
Hmm.
gave everybody $1, and then they canceled their pledge for $1, and like legitly, like I think like at least like 20 grand in like a matter of like 2 days was canceled from BackerKit. And so you have BackerKit wanting to do crowdfunding, you have Facebook wanting to do it, you got crowdfunded, you got Zoop, you got Indiegogo, you got Kickstarter, you got GoFundMe, you got Patreon, you
Yeah,
got OnlyFans, and then you have PayPal Direct, and then you have Buy Me a Coffee. You have all this crazy amount of crowdfunding ability, and it gets complicated, and it really
yeah, no, I get your point. I think it's oversaturated at this point. There's way too many crowdfunding campaigns. It used to be there was just Kickstarter, Indiegogo, a couple of those. But yeah, was there something else you wanted to say before you cut out?
Oh no! I'm just gonna even go off of that point where
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable on Indiegogo. I feel very comfortable on Kickstarter. I don't feel I don't know anything about Zoop. Zoop could be great. It could be bad. I don't know. I've never used it, so I can't openly comment. If I have to use Indiegogo, I will. But
Yeah.
I don't like Indiegogo. It's whatever. And if you got your book on Indiegogo, I'm sorry, but I'm not coming to it, right? Because I don't feel comfortable. And to get me to even, and I think Indiegogo is a little bit more established than Zoop. So to convince me to come to Zoop, you're going to have a hard time. And I think that it becomes problematic because the E word has to come up now, and that's called exclusivity. This is where this ends. This is exactly where it ends. It ends where Kickstarter becomes exclusive, Indiegogo buys exclusivity, Zoop buys exclusivity, and everybody else pretty much goes that route. So I don't know how
Yeah.
you feel about that.
I've seen some people do comics on Kickstarter and Indiegogo at the same exact time. And no judgment toward them, whatever works. But I don't think that's going to last forever. I don't think the sites will allow that forever. And I don't really mind like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or Zoop. I don't have a preference between them, but I do use Kickstarter the most, I would say. I think you probably have the biggest audience on Kickstarter, more people have accounts than the other ones just because it's been around longer and more people are familiar with it.
What's going on right now with Indiegogo is that Indiegogo with certain companies approaches them and says, we want this project. And which means that they're probably either going to push it, they're going to market it, they're going to handle it more in that realm. They're going to, maybe lower their fees. And it gets very, very interesting with that because that's something that sometimes happens. And there's certain, Dynamite's a good example of Bad Kitty. I don't think that that's too much of a secret, but they said, hey, we want this project. And so there you go. And so that's something that is absolutely fascinating in that realm. But I agree that I think it's problematic because it's just dividing versus, I guess,
Yeah,
unifying.
splitting the audience across multiple platforms as opposed to one of them. So that is a bit of an issue. You don't have as big of an audience on one platform as maybe you used to have.
Yeah, it's a problem, and then you also alienate a bunch of people from it. But I digress. Now that I got you and me both canceled,
I just wish everybody best of luck on whatever platform they use. I think you can have luck on Zoop and Indiegogo and Kickstarter.
Oh, I don't have a problem with whatever people want to crowdfund on. I just think that when you give a person one or two choices, they have to go to one or two choices. When you give me 10 choices, because we're seeing this with streaming, right? So I don't have Disney Plus. I love Disney. I own Disney as an investor. I love Disneyland.
Yeah.
I don't have time to watch She-Hulk because I'm watching anime. I have Peacock. I have Netflix. I have, Paramount Plus. There's too much that even if I own Disney, I wouldn't watch it because there's so much content that it's a problem, right?
We really are living in a golden age of content, that's for sure. I know we've had to cut back on some streaming services recently because we just kept getting some as they come out, and all this stuff that we want to watch is spread out across multiple streaming services now. It's like rights issues are changing. Like Netflix used to have everything, and now Netflix lost a lot of their great shows, and it's on other platforms. But yeah.
And then it gets even more complicated. And then it's expensive. I mean, Peacock is paying $500 million for The Office, $100 million every single year to themselves, which is ludicrous. Wow. It is insane because Netflix bought Friends for the year for $100 million. So that's why The Office and Friends are comparable, and that's what is the going rate. If Netflix paid $200 million for Friends, Peacock would have paid $200 million for The Office, and Netflix didn't want to pay more than $100 million. That's why The Office left Netflix.
I didn't know all that behind the scenes, so that's interesting. Yeah, it was a real shame the day Office left Netflix because I used to just have that on the background all the time, and there's just too many streaming services. I don't have room for Peacock right now. Yeah, oh, go ahead. No, you're cutting out again. That's too bad. There you are. Nice. No, I lied. Internet issues. But yeah. So yeah, I just don't have room for all these streaming services these days. I guess while we're waiting for him to come back, I'll read some reviews for Final Boy. So this review is from daredevilsandwarriors.com. They're also Daredevils and Warriors on Instagram. And just a quote from this is, I showed this to my teenage son who knows the genre a lot better than me and does not give praise lightly. And his view on these closing pages of issue number 1 was, quote, that's gangsta as shit. I love that quote. Yeah, I was just
I don't know
if until you got back.
Am I back?
What's that? Yeah, you're back. I can hear you now.
No. Well, what I was saying is that, in another 5 years, it could very well be that The Office is not on Peacock because they don't want to pay for it and they don't want to pay the licensing, and that's how all this works. And then I think it's the same thing with Kickstarter, Indiegogo, all this stuff. I think that there's going to be a point in crowdfunding that it's going to have to become exclusive, and people are going to sign exclusive
That's a good point. That'll probably happen. My goal is to like crowdfund these next 7 issues of Final Boy, get that storyline out there, maybe do a volume one, collect the 7 issues together, and then leverage that to get some publishing deals, some screenwriting deals. Um, just really get myself out there. I wanted to have this as like proof of concept of my writing, basically, that I am a writer and I can see a project from beginning to end. So anybody that's interested in hiring me for a writer could look at that and get an idea of what kind of writer I am. Also, yeah, I just really want to see Final Boy as a movie. That's my biggest goal. I wrote it as a screenplay first and foremost, and that's okay. Good, you're back.
No, I was listening. I was listening. I mean, clearly, I think it's just going to become exclusive, and I think that's where it's all going. And look, I mean, I love it. I love it. It's already happened. I mean, look at Joe Rogan. It's
Mhm.
it's crystal clear where this is all going. It's just a matter of, are we going to get there today, or are we going to get there in 5 years? And that's all it is. But I digress. And when I'm right and everybody's wrong, and everybody's going to challenge me on this, we'll see what happens in 5 years. And you could all say, man, should have listened to Andrew. That's all I'm going to say. I've been right about a lot of things in the last 5 years. I'm going to be right about a
Yeah,
lot more things in the next 5 years.
I believe
Um,
you.
it's just the way it is, and I'm going to make a lot of money because I'm right. So there we go. But I
Mhm.
digress. Um, I do want to give you a chance to self-promote yourself. So where can people bother you, find you, buy the book, buy multiple books, hit you up
Mhm.
if they want something that you're not offering? Because I'm sure that if somebody said, hey, I want A, B, C, and D, and you didn't have D, but you could sell them, I think you would. So all that fun stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So if people want to find me on social media, they can check me out on Instagram and Twitter, the same handle at Sam Carter Writer. And definitely hit me up if you want something that's not offered on Kickstarter. I can definitely get that out there. I think half of the things I sent out when I did issue number one were things that weren't from Kickstarter that people paid me directly after the Kickstarter had ended. So we can definitely get that sorted out. And go to Kickstarter, create an account if you haven't already, and check out Final Boy issues 2 and 3. One is also available. And there's just so many wonderful comics on the platform right now that you can also check out. It's definitely worth making an account if you don't already have one. It's where you're going to find a lot of the more creative ideas in comics right now. And yeah, Final Boy is the comic. It's on Kickstarter, so check it out.
Yeah, no, and I'm gonna just keep saying it. You have to support indie, and what that means is that when indie comics are on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or any crowdfunding, you need to go and back them and actually spend money because these projects don't get made without money. And as I said at the start of this show, and I say it again, I personally don't care if you support Sam's book, you support this show, or you support a comic book that you love, and that, or whether it's a big corporation. I personally don't care as long as you're supporting something that you think you're going to enjoy or you're going to take a risk on, because even if it is corporate or it's indie, if you're supporting it, more of it hopefully will get made. And so I do recommend people that you hopefully like what you heard throughout this interview, minus my internet connections and everything that was rough on this one. But if you like what you heard, you need to go out there and support this book and support projects like this book because that's how they get made. And it is so important. And that's the only thing I can say. And look, if money's tight, everybody's been there. The next best thing you
Yeah,
can do is tweet about it, follow on Instagram, share it out on Facebook, put it into
definitely.
your Instagram story, make a TikTok about it, email a friend, call a friend, play 50-50 with a friend. I don't know anything else you could do. Hopefully maybe, I don't know if Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is still on the air. If you get on that show, you know what it is and you win it, you can go buy like 10 copies, but I digress right there. Um, but you should go support this because these projects don't get made. And even talking about me, look, I'm independent media by definition. And so if you like what you heard, you like any of my interviews, whether you watch them live or you see them on YouTube or whatnot. You need to support independent media too. And I'm not here to, badger anybody or make anybody feel guilty or anything like that. But if you like this type of content, you need to support it. And as I said, and I'm going to say it again, any type of content that you like, big, small, or in between, you need to support. Otherwise, it does disappear. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, October 5th, comic book class is coming. It is going to be a blast. I am actually recording the third section out of 4 this weekend. And so it is super fun, and I'm super excited, and it's a blast. And so if you want to learn that trade, my class is perfect. It is going to be on Udemy first. I'm going to try to get it onto Substack. I'm going to try to get it onto Locals, and it is video and PowerPoints. And once you buy it, the way I view it on Udemy is it's yours. On Substack and Locals, it's going to be subscription based, but there's going to be other stuff. And moving forward, when I build out my next classes, you guys on Substack and Locals, if I get there, are going to have it first. So that's the other thing too, is once you come into it, and if you pick the subscription model, you're going to get access to all my classes. So keep that in mind, but I digress. And on that note, my social media is down below. It's Pop Anime Comics on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I'm going to give you the final word.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I could not be more grateful for all the support, especially Final Boy Issue 1 we funded, and we funded this campaign 2 and 3 in a matter of just a couple of days, I think. And I'm so grateful for everybody. I want to help my fans any way I can, help my readers. Like, I would drive you to the airport at 3 a.m. if I could. That's how grateful I am to have your support. Just hit me up if you need a ride, I guess. I don't know if I should say that or not.
So many things I could say, but I do have things that I can and cannot say anymore. So on that note, everybody, I don't think I could have said that any better myself. So that is a wrap.